Thank you. Now, it is my honor to introduce and to invite to the stage our distinguished panelists. We have 4 distinguished panelists today, and I'm going to introduce each one of you distinguished panelists, and will invite you to come to the stage. First, let me introduce Madam Catherine Fearon, who has been officer in charge of the Conflict Prevention Center of the OSCE since the beginning of this year. And Madam Fearon, please join us on stage. Right here, thank you. Ms. Fearon has joined the OSCE in June 2022 as Deputy Director of the CPC, the Conflict Prevention Center, where she handled the Policy Support Service and oversaw the Southeast Europe, South Caucasus, Central Asia, and Eastern European divisions. Welcome, Ms. Fearon. Now I would like to invite Mr. Johan Berggren, State Secretary to the Minister for Civil Defense of Sweden, to join us on stage. Welcome. Before taking up this post, Mr. Berggren served as Deputy Director of the Swedish Institute for Dialogue on the Middle East and North Africa, was Chief of Staff and Advisor to Tony Blair at the Quartet Office in Jerusalem, and Director of Planning in Government of Prime Minister Fredrik Reinfeldt. Welcome. Now, allow me to invite our next panelist, Mr. Munir Mamadzadeh, UNICEF representative to Ukraine, based in Ukraine. Welcome. Please join us. I think you can sit right here. Mr. Mamadzadeh now oversees an operation that includes 5 field offices in Ukraine, and he previously led UNICEF's office in Uzbekistan and has served in Kyrgyzstan, Azerbaijan, Moldova, and Nepal, as well as at Regional Office for Europe and Central Asia. Welcome. Last but not least, I would like to invite now to join us on stage Mr. Andrei Staunitzer, founder of the Superhumans Center, and previously also a co-owner of the biggest Ukrainian port of TIS.
TIS, thank you.
TIS. Superhumans is a state-of-the-art national medical center in Ukraine for war veterans and civilians suffering from the consequences of war. Superhumans focuses on prosthetics, reconstructive surgery, PTSD treatment, and rehabilitation. So with this, now we will start with the questions to our panelists. The way we envisage this panel is, first I will ask each of the panelists a question, and we're looking forward to hearing from you your answers, and I would ask you to limit your answer to around 5 minutes. And after that, we'll have the second round of questions, when we will invite our colleagues from the audience to intervene with their comments and questions, and then we will ask the panelists for their final remarks. So let me start by asking you, Madam Fearon. You are officer in charge of the OSCE Conflict Prevention Center. The role of the center and OSCE is a coordination role, and of course in this very challenging, demanding geostrategic circumstances, coordination role is very hard to perform. But still, you are doing a lot on the ground, you're doing a lot at your headquarters, and we would be very much interested in hearing from you. How do you coordinate activities with different stakeholders, including the government of Ukraine, the UN organizations, agencies, civil organizations, to bring the dangers, the risks of explosive ordnance to different audiences, population, the different segments of population, and of course, what do these risks of these explosives mean for the population, for their access, for their daily lives, for their access to the, let's say, essential services. Please.
Thank you very much, Madam State Secretary, fellow panelists, dear guests, Minister. I think maybe to start where you left off, I mean, I think there's no doubt but that the impact and the effects of unexploded ordnances, of mines, landmines, different types of mines is devastating on people, on human beings, and also, as the Minister said this morning, on the landscape and on the environment in which unfortunately Ukraine is having to operate at the moment. But maybe just in terms of OSCE's work, and we do it very much in partnership with others. We have been working with Ukraine since 2007, in fact, on demining, because even before the current the current phase of the war against Ukraine, the leftover ordinances, which our other speakers so eloquently put this morning from World War I and II, still have an impact and still will continue. So for a very long time, we've been working with our colleagues in Ukrainian institutions. And one of the earliest things we did with our colleagues in the Geneva International Centre for Humanitarian Demining, I can't see with the lights, but if there's someone here, I'd like to really thank and appreciate that very long-standing partnership that we have with GICHD, putting together the very first, one of the very first information systems for tracking where mines are, and then planning how to do the demining. GICHD bringing expertise, us bringing at the time logistical support, relationships with our Ukrainian colleagues. But obviously after February 22, the situation changed dramatically and drastically for the worse, and we had to adapt somewhat, and really, I think, start to accelerate the type of policy support, because what we are about in OSCE is about building the capacity of our Ukrainian friends and colleagues, the institutions. And so from our extra budgetary funding, we have humanitarian demining a project which is generously funded by the European Union. So shout out to the EU as well for that. But a large number of donors, because the Russian Federation did not join consensus in keeping our missions open there. So we do this now through an extra budgetary support program, and some of our donors on the stage here with us as well. And really what we wanted to do is strengthen the mine action system, so the third pillar of what the Minister was speaking about this morning. But you're right, we can't do anything without others. And so in terms of our Ukrainian colleagues, we're working with the Ministries of Defence, of Interior, the State Emergency Service, the Economy, and the Environmental Protection, the Minister of Environmental Protection, because we think we actually do most of our humanitarian demining work through the lens of the environment, and for a long time we've supported Ukrainian civil society organisations like ECOSAR to do the tracking. So, and we're also, as the Minister also put a stress on this morning, supporting innovation. So we're fostering research, supporting research, and we're also pleased to be able to support some of our Ukrainian colleagues to come to the conference today. So it's really about complementarity. I think we're proud to be part of the Ukrainian coordination mine action working group, but it's really about getting those standards up, exchanging best practice. Unfortunately, we've got a lot of best practice around now, but exchanging that best practice and really moving forward, but all the while keeping in our to the forefront of our minds, this is about the people of Ukraine, this is about the institutions of Ukraine, and this is about the future economic prosperity of Ukraine, and that's a real motivating factor for us and for our staff, our Ukrainian staff, who are really dedicated to this every day on the ground. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Important points about partnerships and complementarity, including partnerships with donor countries. So to you, Mr. Bergman, as a major donor to Ukraine, can you talk a little bit about how the humanitarian demining fits into your overall approach of support to Ukraine, what your priorities are in this regard, but also perhaps what challenges you have in terms of reaching the population that you want to support, and perhaps, if you can share some experiences from the ground, I'm sure this would be very interesting for our audience. Please.
Sure. Thank you so much, and thank you for organizing this really important event and for assembling us here today. You're really highlighting one of the many impacts of this terrible, illegal, full-scale invasion, and I completely supported everything you said at the beginning about Slovenia's position on this. The impact of this terrible war, of course, will remain also long after the war ends, and what we're discussing here today is one example of that. I was fortunate enough and honored to participate in last year's conference in Zagreb, and it's good to see some people from that conference and to see all the progress that's been made and achieved since then, including by many people here today. And it's quite inspiring listening to the various speeches and the actions that have been made. This panel ultimately is about people, and people's interactions are guided by norms and values, and hopefully the norms and values that we together want to see shaping the situation. Landmines obviously are a cheap and long-lasting weapon that have very devastating effects that can be felt by people so far away from where the mines actually are laid. And yet Ukraine has demonstrated remarkable resilience and has managed to keep up this agriculture export despite the war. Nonetheless, it's estimated that agriculture production, wheat production, has fallen by more than 40% since the beginning of 2022, with export of wheat projected to hit a 10-year low this year. And this is mainly, of course, affecting people in developing countries in Asia and Africa, and therefore demining in Ukraine is not only an urgent need for the people of Ukraine, but for people across the globe. And I think it's important to remember that it's not just about, the people of Ukraine are the ones most terribly harmed, but it has longer term and consequences much further afield. Earlier this year, Sweden announced additional support through our Civil Contingencies Agency, MSB, as part of a 3-year program focusing on supporting Ukrainian government partners, including the National Police of Ukraine, the NPU, and the State Transport Special Services, SSTS. Through that support, these government partners will enhance their capacity to train their own explosive ordnance disposal units on humanitarian demining. The additional support of $9 million US brings the total Swedish envelope to 44 million USD since February 2022. I do also just want to say that obviously Swedish support to Ukraine goes far beyond demining, even though that's a very, very important part. Our total support, military and civilian, now stands at about 57 billion SEK, which is about 5.4 billion US. We have passed 17 military aid packages. And we have also announced that in the coming years, in 2025 and 2026, we will provide for an envelope of about 25 billion SEK, so just under 2.5 billion USD for each year, primarily military, but also civilian support. So we are committed to supporting Ukraine in the long term. Moving to the demining aspect, the Swedish support has come in many ways through funding, equipment, personnel, and expertise through the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency, MSB, that I mentioned, and partners such as the UNDP, UNOPS, the Danish Refugee Council, the World Food Programme, and the Partnership Fund for Resilient Ukraine. A significant part of the Swedish support is demining, protective and first aid equipment for Ukrainian EOD teams, for SESU, the State Emergency Service of Ukraine that was mentioned before, the National Police, and the SSTS, so that they're able to be the first responders to assist people after air raids and to clear explosive ordnances by assisting the brave men and women carrying out this work, this very dangerous work. More Ukrainians will be protected from harm. We're now starting a program where Sweden is supporting training facilities for NPUs and SSTS EOD teams. The adoption of the National Mine Action Strategy and the accompanying operational plan for 2024 to 2026 that we heard about is very welcome and demonstrate Ukraine's leadership on mine action. The leadership from the Ukrainian government is crucial for coordinating this massive demining operation so that all of our assets are utilized as efficiently as possible. The continued work on prioritization of which land to survey and clear first will therefore be important, as will the development for criteria for removing the status of suspected contaminated areas where there's no evidence of contamination, so-called cancellation. And finally, last but not least, I would like to highlight the important work of victim assistance. Clearing mines is key for protecting Ukrainians in general, but supporting people's rehabilitation after mine incidents is an equivalently important part of Sweden's support to mine action in Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this overview of what Sweden is doing in support of demining in Ukraine and also in a wider context. Now, you mentioned clearing the minefields, clearing the contaminated areas. You mentioned psychosocial support. Another important part of the humanitarian demining equation is also education about the risks that explosive ordinances pose. Especially vulnerable to these risks are children and youth. Mr. Mamadadze, how do you go about? You are underground in Ukraine. You have been there. UNICEF has been there for quite a while now. But you upped your presence significantly over the last 2.5 years. It would be very instructive for us and interesting to hear about how you go about to educating this very specific group or let's say demographic that is also not unified, but we have a different age youth, different age children who have to you have to get through to them with your messages to make sure they understand that these risks are real, they're serious, and if they get in contact with these with these ordinances, that means that they will have consequences for life. So anything you can share with us also in terms of your experience on the ground would be most welcome.
Thank you so much, Excellencies. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm grateful for the attention that this important subject has gotten as a part of this conference, because unfortunately oftentimes when we talk about the mining or mine action area, importance of the education or child victim assistance is overlooked, to be honest. And it's a pleasure to see it being highlighted, and thank you for having me today. Why it is important, I think, from the opening of the event and powerful story and story about Atollah in Afghanistan, I think we're all convinced why it is important, right? And we, of course, can talk about number of children that were affected so far since full-scale invasion. We have got 29 children in Ukraine killed and 106 injured. But I think we need to put these numbers aside, because each and every life matters, especially when it is about the youngest citizens of our planet. And then we need to count how many more children might end up being affected by this in years to come, while country will be fully demined, and how many generations ahead we're addressing. But let me now go back to the point around education. Especially in the east of the country, where UNICEF also is present, we need to understand that the war has started a decade ago. So it's not a matter of last 2-3 years, right? And our education work has already launched at that time, covering around 4 million people with education-related interventions. And today, of course, with the escalation and the impact and scale, we have heard all the needs have actually risen exponentially, and therefore we are looking at conducting national campaigns. We're working with state institutions, with private partners, with civil society, to make it as a kind of nationwide campaign to address needs of different groups. And here I would like to highlight why it is important also to have tailored approach, because we're not talking about new generation as a homogeneous group, right? So we're talking about children at early years, we're talking about school children, we're talking about adolescent groups and others. So, and it is also that it's not only in the course of engagement in relation to our humanitarian efforts, but also part of the country where we do recovery work. We also educate communities around risks, but also I have to acknowledge the fact that, for example, thanks to Germany, when we go into recovery or infrastructure rehabilitation, precondition is to clear the territory where children will be enjoying their life and going back to normalcy. And what Madame Sveridenko this morning said, demining is prerequisite for everything, right? So with all this, I think with our campaigns and national work that we have been conducting through different partners, we have national police engaged with us, we have state emergency services, we have our excellent champion. You have heard about Dog Patron, who is goodwill, we call goodwill dog ambassador of UNICEF to promote mine action among children, who is so popular. But it is all the interventions that we have, most important is their sustainability. And where we see their sustainability is the fact that we have managed to get a dedicated working group on education, which is actually co-chaired by Ministry of Economy and UNICEF, and we have Ministry of Education and other colleagues on board. And if you allow me, with 1 minute that I have, I would like us to watch a short video about that engagement and also broader work, including child victim assistance. Thank you.
Був голосний вибух, і побачив, що стопу відірвало, я впав.
Меня оглушило, белые, ну, в глазах все белое было, ничего не видел.
У мене осколок в шиї був, я отак от потрогала його.
Леса заминированы, дороги. Мне кажется, они везде разбросаны.
Підлітки просто, думають, що це якісь шутки, щось таке.
Просто золоте право не твоє, в принципі, заховувати в звичні речі. Ми ж не ставимо випереджувальні знаки безпосередньо біля небезпечного предмету.
Навчання передбачено саме в інтерактивній формі, від якихось ігор до відеороликів, до переодягання в костюми, до виконання завдань.
Вберегтися і в голові прокрутити. Не твоє, не чіпай.
Thank you very much. We see how important is raising awareness, but of course, unfortunately, it is unavoidable that people get hurt, and then these people need physical and mental rehabilitation. They need to be reintegrated socially, economically into the society. And Mr. Staunitzer, your center for Superhumans, the Superhumans Center, is well known for its excellent work and for using the cutting-edge technologies to provide care for victims of war. I would be very interested in hearing from you how you go about providing this rehabilitation support, but also reintegration support, perhaps also in terms of reintegrating the victims of war through mine action. Particularly, this field is perhaps one of the fields where they can be very giving back in terms of through their experience, they can use their experience to help others. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Gabric. Well, first of all, I would like to thank everyone here for what they're doing, because it cannot be overestimated. This is an incredible job, and you know, the size of territory of Switzerland is mined in Ukraine right now. My own house outside of Kiev was heavily mined because it was occupied by the Russians, and when I was trying to get back in, when the Russians were kicked out, the amounts of mines were just tremendous. We even found a few mines in a washing machine, so whoever would open the washing machine would be dead. So it's a clearly war against civilians. It's not military against military. I would also like to start thanking country of Slovenia, our big donor Howard Buffett, who is here, who believed in us. And basically what we managed to do is we built a center for war trauma starting from April 2022 in a country that didn't have any war trauma experience. We started off with prosthetics. You saw the video. You will see a video from Superhumans. That's why I don't have too much time. I just have to make it really fast. So what we do is we give people second chance. We try to give them an opportunity to regain their life and be reintegrated into society. It's crucial that people who lost their limbs are verticalized within 6 to 8 months, because otherwise the chances of them being verticalized and reintegrated are really low. They get used to the wheelchair, they get used to lying down, they will become a burden for their families, for the economy, etc. And we try to give them the second chance. And to be quite honest, these people are magnificent. They inspire me so much, because it's a hard work. You really need to work hard to train the muscles that you never knew you had, to keep your balance, to not to be afraid to fall. It's a very complicated job, and without having a dream, without having a proper motivation, it's impossible to achieve it. For example, I love this example. We have 2 patients, double amputees, very similar trauma. One of them went up and running within 3 weeks, and the other one we just couldn't verticalize for 2 months. So we started talking to the psychologist, because we have a multidisciplinary team. It's rehabilitation, prosthetics, psychologists, career consultants. And we found that the first guy, his wife was pregnant, and he promised to her that he's going to be holding his baby standing upright. And the other one just didn't have that dream. And that's why, you know, he wasn't motivated enough. We found his motivation eventually. He wouldn't believe what it was. He wanted to be standing. Yeah, right. So just a simple thing. So you start valuing, you start treasuring things that are, you know, for granted, like taking a shower or opening a door, etc., etc. So what we're doing at Superhumans is about 1,000 people have already received prosthetics and reconstructive surgeries and other help. About 60,000 people are still waiting in the country to receive their prosthetics. And the whole country right now is doing approximately 350, 400 patients per month. So if we continue in this way, we will probably, it's going to take us 12 years. We need to scale up. We need to receive as much expertise and technical help as possible for the whole country. And then we can get these people reintegrated. We can get them up and running and working. A lot of them actually want to go back to the front line. A lot of them want to work as sappers, as minesweepers, etc., because they were evacuated not by the medics, but by their fellow countrymen, their servicemen. So the medics are #1 target for the Russians, and there are not enough medics. So most of our patients are evacuated by their fellow. They are being evacuated for 8 hours, 10 hours, sometimes even 12 hours. So you have a tourniquet syndrome. You have to cut the limb, which you normally wouldn't need to cut. You have huge amount of issues with the infections like hepatitis C, with HIVs, with direct blood transfusions. I mean, I'm not talking about the amount of problem that we have. So the better work you guys do, the less work we have to do, the less people we would have to install prosthetics. To cut the long story short, I'll just show you the video of what Superhumans is doing, and I'm here at your disposal if you want to talk. We are open for any kind of help.
While they continue destroying, we are getting stronger every day. Every step makes small wins. Our strength is in hugs and love. Not only we are fighting for our right to exist, we live. We love. We inspire and we get inspired. We win. For we are superhumans.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing with us in very real terms what it means to help to assist victims of remnant explosives. Thank you. Now I'm starting with the second round of questions, and we will follow the same consecutive order. So, Madam Firan, my first question in the second round goes to you. You already spoke about how the OSCE is using its conflict prevention mechanisms in support of the demining efforts in Ukraine. You mentioned the importance of enhancing local capacities, perhaps also localization. And I would ask you if you can expound a little bit more on this particular aspect, of cooperation with the local partners and on the enhancing their own local, let's say, capacity.
Thank you, Madam State Secretary, again, and just to acknowledge the both very powerful videos that we've just seen. They really, the impact, the picture really was telling 1,000 words. But thank you very much for sharing. It's a revelation for us because we make a contribution in a certain part of the scale, the range of activities that needs to be done to try and prevent the kind of injuries, the kind of injuries that we're seeing, and the kind of hope that comes, the kind of rehabilitation that's there as well. And when I was preparing to come to the conference today, I called my colleague in Ukraine and said, Yaroslav, what is the thing that you're most proud that we've actually contributed in terms of the relationship and on the whole mine action? And he said to me something which I found a little bit odd at first, but he said, we started the process of getting a unified training curriculum for all of the different agencies, and now we have a unified training curriculum. And it really brought home to me really the necessity and the need for not just on the international partner side to work together, but also on Ukrainian institutional side to work together, and then to bring those two blocks of actors together, so the coordination element, but the training. And you also mentioned that Slovenia is investing in training the trainers, which also we're doing as well. And I think that's the right way to go, is to put the expertise in the hands of the local actors who really know best and can best articulate what it is that they need. So unifying, creating standardization in approach, in policy, and standardization within the country, but also with the international standards. And I think that we also need to, kind of looking ahead, and you also mentioned issues like psychological support and the scale of the psychological support. We are also working on increasing that Ukrainian capacity in those terms as well. But one thing I think that we also need to think about going forward, and that is very much having a gender perspective on mine action and engagement. And so one of the other things, just as an example, in just last month we had a gender awareness in mine action workshop with a range of our local colleagues and international colleagues in Kiev. And again, just getting people thinking, getting the conversation started, because there's going to be a lot of work for a very long time to come.
Thank you. Taking up your point on gender perspective, of course, we know, and it's perhaps a little bit surprising that we are fully aware of the importance of women, peace, security agenda for only like 20 years. Before that, there was not much emphasis on this, but since the resolution 1325 and so on, much more attention has been put on this particular gender perspective, women, peace, security agenda. So my question to you, State Secretary Berggren, is how do you implement this agenda? I know that this is one of the approaches that you put a lot of emphasis on in your international activities. So do we, Slovenia, including during our membership in the Security Council. And Switzerland actually is organizing a meeting on this particular topic, women, peace, security, in the Security Council next week. It is very important because we understand that there is no peace if we do not have the entire population included in the peace process. And part of the peace process is in security, is ensuring security, but it is also, of course, what we are discussing here today, demining, support to the victims of explosions and so forth. So can you expound a little bit on how Sweden is implementing and including this agenda in what you're doing on the ground in Ukraine in humanitarian demining?
Sure, thank you very much for that question. But before, I also just want to acknowledge those very, very powerful videos. I mean, we use the word inspiring or inspiration quite a lot, and sometimes it's perhaps overused, but I felt those really were, those videos, particularly the last one, seeing those people suffering, overcoming the tragedy is really inspiring. And of course, it also underlines the tragedy of this war, the terrible human costs, which we sometimes forget. But yes, moving to women, peace and security, this has been a key theme for Swedish foreign policy for a long time. And we recently adopted a new national action plan on women, peace and security for the 2024 to 2028 period, with women's leadership and expertise being one of our 4 goals. And the action plan reiterates that gender equality is a Swedish core value and a prerequisite for equal rights, freedom and democracy. Women's influence and equal participation in peace and security panties, bras, rain jackets. So to be very concrete, those are some very specific things. But also, our agency, our Civil Consumer Agency, ensures the distribution of mixed sizes when donating PPE equipment. Helmets, PPE vests, light bomb suits. So instead of just giving larger sizes that might not be appropriate to the whole population, about approximately a third are in the smaller sizes that in general are requested by women and better match the physical size and head size of women. So it's being aware of the actual the real needs of both men and women on the ground, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. So you spoke about awareness raising, the importance of awareness raising among the youth, among children. You also touched a little bit upon reintegration of those children and youth who were affected by explosive ordnance in Ukraine. Can you now expound a little bit more on this reintegration aspect, please?
I think it is clear that the ongoing war has a devastating physical and mental toll, and maybe some colleagues have heard me earlier referring to that. I keep saying that even if war ends today, what is clear is that it will take generations for people, especially youngest citizens of the country, to recover for primarily two reasons. Or three reasons, let's put it that way. One is around demining, another one is impact on mental health and psychosocial state of children and young people, and we know that you cannot fix it overnight, and all the learning losses that children have, because after COVID and now 30 years of the war, children don't have opportunities to interact and study. So with all this, what I'm heading to is to highlight why we need to have holistic and comprehensive approach in what we're doing in also rehabilitation and recovery. And we need to also pay attention when we refer to holistic approach, age sensitivity, but also gender dimension of boys having more risky behavior, and what does it mean. And you saw, I would like to take you back to the video. You saw Yaroslav, 14 years old, from Kharkiv. And the support that we extended to him was quite comprehensive by deploying case management system through child protection services, bringing psychologists and social workers on board. We worked with the Ministry of Education and Science to get him enrolled to some education programs, while we are also working on promoting inclusive education. But what is important is that such work is done in a systematic way, and we do cover all the elements, starting from health needs, psychosocial trauma, child protection needs, looking at the social protection, and even sometimes cash assistance to those families, because we know that these children are the most disadvantaged. We know that their families have been displaced multiple times. Last week I was in Sumy. I was interacting with families that have to leave their houses behind. Yesterday there was a decision to mandatorily evacuate children with families again from Kharkiv Oblast. So what does it mean to a child in Ukraine? And again, how our support is comprehensive enough to cover all the needs, including the needs of children that are at risk, but also impacted by this war already directly.
Thank you. And now I'm going back to you, Mr. Staunitzer. Apropos the video we saw, it really is very moving to see the injuries. What is even more moving is to see the resilience and to see the humanity through which this resilience is built. And obviously, to have access to these innovations, to have access to these facilities for support in terms of rehabilitation, in terms of psychosocial support, you need support of international organizations, of international donors. So I would ask you for your views on how these relations are working, or how, where do you see they could be working better?
I would say that the amount of pressure that Ukraine is suffering right now hasn't been around for the last 80 years. So we have 1.5 million people in combat right now. This affects any ministry, any sphere, any industry. I can talk at least for the medical healthcare system. The amount of challenges that they're going through, that we're going through, is just enormous. So if you ask me, so donor help, technical help is important, but knowledge and experience help and professional help could be even more important than money sometimes, because it has to be a holistic approach, a systematic approach. We cannot handle this amount of crisis on our own. And if you look at reintegrating, it's a very difficult thing. We have so many displaced people. A lot of people are thinking of, changing a job. We have to provide new opportunities for them. A lot of people will never be doing anything apart from war, so they will go work as I don't know, private military, whatever. So I'd say experience and professionalism and knowledge is equally important for the Ukrainians right now.
Thank you. I will now thank our distinguished panelists for your insights that you shared with us. And I'm going to now turn to the audience for some statements from the floor. I have on my list 3 interveners, and the first is Dr. Peter Royce, Head of Division Humanitarian Assistance, International Disaster Response, Humanitarian Mine Action at the German Federal Foreign Office. Dr. Royce, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Switzerland, for organizing this so important conference. Germany is happy that we could help to contribute a little bit to pave the way with our Ukraine Recovery Conference in June this year in Berlin. Thank you for this very, very good discussion, for this moving, I would say, shocking videos we have seen. It's important that we remind ourselves, and we were specialists, but that we remind all the others what's going on, how important it is to stand firm with Ukraine in this day, and that we shout out in the world, stay committed to help Ukraine. Germany has supporting humanitarian mine action in Ukraine since 2016. Munia, you said the war is a decade long now, but since 2022 we increased our budget for mine action in Ukraine to 20 million a year. And we have 7 projects with international partners in Ukraine right now. Our partnership for humanitarian mine action has reached a new strategic level over the last year, as both Germany and Ukraine have new strategies on mine action, reflecting our strong political and financial support. Germany, together with our NGO implementing partners, is championing victim assistance. And we want to do our victim assistance in a non-discriminatory and age, gender and disability responsive way. As announced in June in Berlin, we invest €1 million for a pilot project on victim assistance, and all over we committed ourselves to spend 10% of our annual budget for mine action in Ukraine in the next years to victim assistance. Let me conclude by saying, we all in our countries, including myself, we fight against shrinking budget and humanitarian action as a whole, and as a consequence in mine action as well. So let's discuss further about alternative, innovative methods of financing, how we can continue, how we can maybe enhance even their ownership, how we can find new means for continuing this task, because as we said, it won't last maybe 700 years as announced beforehand in the discussion, but 10 years it's too short term. So this is a long-term engagement, and therefore we have to find the money as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Royce, also for this important point and well noted, and also for the overview of the important contribution by Germany for humanitarian demining. Now I have Ms. Roxana Bobolica, Head of Humanitarian Disarmament and Peacebuilding from Danish Refugee Council on my list, and I invite Ms. Bobolica to deliver the statement. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, State Secretary Gabric, and thank you also to the panelists for all their insights. I would like to share just a few brief remarks from DRC's experience in Ukraine. We have been in Ukraine since 2014, and we have been engaging in mine action, and we've been doing so by anchoring our mine action response in a broader humanitarian and also recovery response. So, for instance, whilst we do clearance, we also look to support farmers with economic recovery programs. We also use our shelter and rehabilitation for fixing schools, for instance, and water systems. And we are also engaged in victim assistance. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank both Sweden and Germany for your support with our victim assistance program. So just a few points. To ensure a mine action response that is timely, effective, and makes best use of funding, we feel it is also essential to have clear prioritization and coordination mechanisms. And as we've heard also in the plenary earlier, the National Mine Action Strategy highlights the need for criteria that balances humanitarian social impacts with economic priorities, because it's really important that poor communities and small-scale farmers are not left behind. What we would like to emphasize, though, is the effective operationalization of this criteria, which is also essential because we feel there's currently a gap between our ambitions as a sector and the daily reality of planning and implementation. So, as colleague from OSCE has alluded earlier as well, the third pillar of the mine action strategy is really essential. And in that sense, we do need a streamlined mine action architecture that includes national and regional coordination among all institutions to ensure both transparency among all stakeholders. And finally, I feel like this point has been iterated very clearly in this panel, and thank you for the work that Andre and Superhumans is doing. But I think it's important to reiterate that we are here not because of the mines. We are here because of the limbs and the lives that are taken by mines every day. And I just want to echo the point that Andre has made about the limited capacity that is not limited just in funding, but also technical capacity, and that these needs for victim assistance will actually continue long after the mines are actually out of the ground. So we want to emphasize the need for greater capacity, but also for coordination, because victim assistance is particularly challenging when it comes to coordination due to the fact that it spans so many different areas, from social services to health, rehabilitation, psychosocial support, and so on. So I will wrap up with a key point and a question. This is a critical moment for Ukraine. How the mine action sector is being set up now will have an impact on the speed and effectiveness of Ukraine's recovery. So it's crucial that we put people at the center and that we create a mine action architecture that does that right now. So my question to the panelists, if you had a piece of advice, a change that we could make as the mine action sector now to bring us to a state in 10 years' time, 30 years' time, where we have a sustainable system that puts people at the center, what would that one change be?
Thank you very much for your intervention and for this question. I would actually ask the panelists to address this question in your closing remarks. We have, and thank you for emphasizing the sustainability. We have one more intervener from the floor, Mr. Anton Leis Garcia, Director of the Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, well, I have to say that Mr. Ley was obliged today to go back urgently to Madrid. I'm also part of the delegation of Spain in this conference. My name is Pablo Gama. I'm the coordinator in the agency for the aid to Ukraine. We are, of course, also helping Ukraine in the demining efforts, and we also stress the gender perspective in all our activities and in this activity too. And I have a question for for the representative of UNICEF, which is the following one. I imagine that all what you are doing in Ukraine is based on your previous experience, the experience of UNICEF in other countries. But are there some particular factors in Ukraine which oblige you to have new projects, new approaches? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I invite our panelists to react to the question. One question directed to you, Mamadze, Mr. Mamadze, and then also to address the question about one advice that you would have in terms of keeping the focus and to ensuring a sustainable action in support of demining and rehabilitation, reintegration of victims of war in Ukraine, specifically through humanitarian demining. I'm changing the consecutive order now, so I'm giving the floor to you first, please.
Thank you. Very briefly, I think when I look back at my career, like almost 20 years ago, when I joined UNICEF as a national professional, I was in charge of mine risk education at that time in my home country, and I was thinking like, okay, hopefully it will be the last time I'm dealing with this, because the world is already sensitized enough not to have this problem on the shoulder of children. But reality is different, and yet almost after 20 years I have to be involved on this subject in Ukraine. I think what made it unique for us in terms of education, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that schools are closed have to make us more innovative in terms of our approach, and therefore you have seen in the video where, for example, especially for the frontline area, we're introducing mobile classes rather than regular kind of educational programs. So that's something that I wanted to highlight. But in general, also, if I can take the moment to have final remarks also, I think explosive ordnance risk education and victim assistance is immense in terms of needs and only increasing. But yet, I think children are still a bit invisible in that. I know many would say that we have victim assistance programs, we do the work, but they're not always age and gender sensitive. So it's my plea again to highlight that. Education is prevention, it's life-saving, and we have evidence confirming that. I think there should be QR code with the study that we have conducted that can refer to that. And I think, again, going back to what was mentioned also in Berlin Recovery Conference, but I want to highlight it here, and our DRC colleague mentioned that it's not only about how we do demining or how we rebuild the country, it is about focus on human capital. And this is where I see children should be in the center of the recovery efforts. And my final point is that if I may request organizers also to make sure that the outcome document of this conference also refers to age and gender as a key dimensions of that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Fearon, please.
Sure. Thank you again. Thank you for the questions and reflections from the floor. In relation to the question from the Danish colleague asked, ordinarily the first thing I would do and do this would be to call Yaroslav again and ask him what's the answer there. But I think that I think actually Ukraine is doing things pretty right. I mean, in terms of the context, and I think that communication and coordination are key with internal actors, national actors and international actors. but also strong leadership. And I think we see very strong leadership under the Minister of Economy on this issue, and having the strategy and the framework. So I think that from the political perspective and the implementation perspective, I think nobody wants to be in this situation, but in the sense that they are, I think the Ukrainian approach, being open, asking for expertise, not being afraid to say there's some things we know and there's some things that we don't know. So I think, as always, clarity, communication, coordination are key. And perhaps just in concluding remarks, what OSCE is interested in supporting Ukraine in is resilience. You mentioned resilience earlier, democratic resilience, but also societal resilience. And of which mine action is but one element, but it's a foundational element, and so in that case it's very important. It's very important for us. Building Ukraine's democracy is really a bulwark against further invasions of the hybrid nature, and for us it's really important, and it's been really a privilege today to see how the part of it, the little bit that we do, contributes to the overall chain of actions, and we will remain committed to that for as long as it takes. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Now, State Secretary Berggren, your final thoughts and advice.
Sure, thank you very much. So 3 quick comments. First of all, addressing the question, very relevant question, what are the factors for success? I think they've been touched on. I think having a clear and strong national strategy, having clear and strong national ownership, which seems very much to be the case. And then I think also, which was mentioned earlier in the other panel this morning, technology and innovation. And as unfortunately, Ukraine will be doing this for quite some time. There will be ample opportunities to improve and sort of iteratively see how technology and innovation, and we heard about drones and other technologies, AI, how that can be used to become even more effective to address these issues, right? Secondly, I just want to, again, just maybe zoom out a little bit and remind us of, we're here, addressing limbs and human lives, but why are we here? Just reminding us of the Russian aggression, completely unfounded, completely unnecessary, an attack on a peaceful state, and just reminding us of some of the insidious strategies that they're using. You mentioned the mines in washing machines. I mean, the insidious strategy of double tapping, where they attack civil targets, schools, hospitals, libraries, and then the rescue services arrive, and then they attack again, double tapping, precisely to strike at the rescue services that are meant to help and provide civilian protection. I mean, it's completely unacceptable, in violation of all international law. And I appreciate the comments here about democracy. Ukraine is fighting to defend its democracy. We are supporting Ukraine to defend democracy in Ukraine and the rest of the world. This is a struggle between an authoritarian state and a democratic state, and we need to remember that. Finally, on a positive note, very pleased and happy that, as I understand, the outcome document of this conference, the Ukraine Mine Action Conference, is gathering a lot of momentum and support, and as I understand, will be adopted later today. And I think that's an excellent outcome, something we should all applaud and welcome. And thank you again so much for hosting this good discussion.
Thank you, and thank you for your remarks, reminding us why we are here today discussing Ukraine mine action. It is because of the aggression, completely illegal aggression by Russia against Ukraine. And we saw this unspeakable human suffering due to this aggression. So now we are coming to an end of our panel. Last but not least, now I invite you, Mr. Staunitzer, for your final comments and perhaps also advice, as we were asked to provide.
Thank you. I would like to follow up what Roxanne said. We're not here about the mines, we're here about the people. And these people suffer a lot, especially our patients who have mine explosions in their hands or stepping on a landmine. They have to undergo a lot of difficult surgeries that continue for hours and hours. It's a series of surgeries. So normally, if it's a face reconstructive surgery, it can be 10, it can be 15 surgeries over 2 years. And they're very complex, and you will always be unsatisfied with what you see in the mirror. So unlike getting a prosthetics where it's a fun factory, you just learn how to walk a second time in your life. Getting used to your new face is almost impossible, and these people, they go through a lot, and our goal is to decrease as much as we can, decrease the amount of these people. It turns out that actually losing your identity is much more difficult than losing your limb, which was a surprise to me. So we have a quadruple amputee who is a happy guy, and we have a person with a face issue, let me put it this way, who has lost her identity, and it's impossible to get her back to a normal physical, psychological state. So what I'm trying to say is that the fact that Ukrainian war is no longer as much on CNN doesn't mean it went away. It's still there. It's even more than a year ago. We receive now a lot of evacuation trains at Superhumans from Kursk, which is nobody speaking about, obviously, but a lot of our soldiers are being wounded, a lot of civilians, a lot of kids, unfortunately. So my takeaway is, it turns out it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So let's get ready for a marathon, and please keep up Ukraine on top of your agenda, even though it's not on top of our news channels in Europe and the US. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will try now to wrap up a little bit our conversation here. We will have proper conclusions later on in the plenary, but let me just wrap up some of the ideas, some of the thoughts, some of the emphases that we heard from our panelists and also from our interveners. First of all, as you just mentioned, I think that sustainability of our focus and of our financing is crucial. So we are in this not for the short run, but for the long term, as you say, for the marathon and not for a sprint. The panel highlighted also that Ukraine's path to social and economic recovery requires a multifaceted approach beyond mine clearance. Key areas of focus should include education and prevention efforts, capacity building, rehabilitation initiatives, and comprehensive train-the-trainer programs. Emphasis was also put on community-based strategies that are essential, particularly in support of vulnerable groups such as children, women, people with disabilities, veterans, and other at-risk populations. Emphasis on human capital. Additionally, prioritizing public awareness, fostering effective coordination, and ensuring accessible rehabilitation services will be critical to Ukraine's sustained recovery and resilience. And again, emphasis on sustained. Thank you very much. Thank you, excellent panel. I appreciate all your thoughts. Excellent, and I'm sure, and thank you. And I invite the audience to give a round of applause to our excellent distinguished panelists. Oh, not to forget, I almost forgot some housekeeping remarks, but I have to find them. First of all, I have to tell you that lunch is served as of 12:30. We are only 5 minutes beyond our program. So lunch is served in exhibition hall from 12:30 to 2 p.m. And media conference will be held here in the Lausanne room from 1 to 1:30 p.m. Speakers in the media conference will be Federal Councillor Ignacio Cassis, First Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Economy of Ukraine, Yulia Svirdienko, State Minister for Foreign Affairs of Japan, Yoshimi Tsuge, and this will be followed by a visit of the mining demonstration at the minefield with media. Please be back in the plenary at 2 p.m. for the reporting back session from panels 1 to 3. As you know, 3 panels took place concurrently in parallel, so we will hear also about the conclusions from other 2 panels. Thank you very much.
n'y a pas de lumière ici? Personne n'arrive à lire.
Could we have the lights? Could we open those row of lights in order to see the nose? So I think you will have to watch closely to your lights. We don't find here the button to open the lights. Sorry for this. Welcome to this press conference. Bienvenue à cette conférence de presse. The conference will be spoken in French, in Ukrainian and in Japanese. So please be ready for the headset. Cette conférence de presse réunit le conseiller fédéral Cassis, en charge du département fédéral des affaires étrangères, la première vice-première ministre d'Ukraine, Yulia Sviridenko, première ministre et également responsable de l'économie et du commerce, ainsi que le State Minister for Foreign Affairs, Suge Yoshifumi. Cette conférence de presse va commencer avec 3 statements. Tout d'abord du conseiller fédéral Cassis, suivi de la première Sviridenko et du secrétaire d'État aux affaires étrangères, Yoshifumi. Les 2 premiers intervenants prendront vos questions à la suite de vos statements. Monsieur le conseiller fédéral, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur Bidot. Madame la première vice-ministre de l'Ukraine, Monsieur le ministre d'État du Japon, je voudrais tout d'abord vous redonner encore une fois la bienvenue, mesdames et messieurs des médias également, à cette conférence de presse. Permettez-moi de remercier l'école hôtelière de Lausanne qui nous héberge ces 2 jours ici, dans ce merveilleux campus universitaire que l'on a souhaité utiliser une première fois comme siège d'une rencontre diplomatique importante. Et j'aimerais aussi vous dire qu'au terme de cette première journée, mes pensées vont au peuple ukrainien, à celles et à ceux qui la guerre a enlevé un parent, un proche, un enfant. L'Ukraine n'est pas aussi loin de la Suisse que vous le pensez. Elle est à 2300 kilomètres. Elle détient désormais le triste record du pays le plus miné au monde. Le déminage humanitaire, vous le comprenez, est la réponse essentielle, la réponse première, la phase 0 de la reconstruction. Non seulement donc elle sauve des vies, mais elle constitue une condition préalable indispensable. Sans déminage humanitaire, vous n'avez pas une production agricole, vous ne donnez pas à manger aux gens, vous ne pouvez pas laisser jouer les enfants, vous ne pouvez pas instaurer de l'industrie. Un engagement commun, si on veut parler de reconstruction, et la Suisse l'a décidé avec la conférence de Lugano, un engagement commun et des actions concrètes sont nécessaires de toute urgence pour rendre leur terrain aux Ukrainiens et pour leur permettre de cultiver le sol et se déplacer sans danger. L'urgence a fait que la première conférence a déjà été organisée l'année passée à Zagreb, en Croatie, et celle-ci représente la 2e conférence. Et à côté de moi, le Japon vous signalera son intention d'organiser la 3e conférence l'année prochaine. Cet objectif de la conférence qui vise à renforcer la coopération internationale et le soutien au déminage humanitaire en Ukraine, l'objectif, c'est exactement échanger du savoir, les best practices au niveau technique et en même temps au niveau politique, assurer le soutien, non seulement le soutien moral, mais également le soutien financier et stratégique pour la reconstruction, qui n'est pas une chose simple. C'est pour ça que, à la fin de cette journée, nous allons conclure avec un appel à l'action que je vais remettre dans les mains du Japon dans quelques minutes à la fin de la séance de clôture de la première journée, puisqu'on n'a pas besoin de nouvelles règles, on n'a pas besoin de papier, on a besoin d'action. Et c'est sur ce mot que nous aimerions attirer l'attention de vous toutes ici et aujourd'hui. Laissez-moi, deuxième communication, laissez-moi vous dire juste qu'est-ce que la Suisse fait en ce moment. Depuis le début de cette guerre contre l'Ukraine, la Confédération a alloué environ 3,7 milliards de francs suisses. Le gros, c'est pour les 65 000 Ukrainiennes et Ukrainiens qui sont aujourd'hui en Suisse, mais un demi-milliard, c'est pour toute l'assistance humanitaire, diplomatique, etc., que nous avons pu mettre en œuvre. Le Conseil fédéral, il y a quelques mois déjà, il a décidé de mettre l'accent dans le chapitre humanitaire sur le déminage humanitaire pour les raisons que j'ai évoquées tout à l'heure. Et il a investi 100 millions de francs, c'était déjà l'année passée. On vient maintenant d'allouer 30 millions à la Fondation suisse de déminage. Ce sont des acteurs qui sont au front. On a besoin des stratégies, mais on a besoin d'hommes et de femmes qui font de l'action et des machines. Vous verrez l'importance des machines aujourd'hui. Grâce à cette contribution, je crois que la Fondation suisse pourra implémenter de manière importante aussi son activité. Le Conseil fédéral a décidé de rester engagé sur la région Ukraine pour les prochaines 12 ans. Il a décidé d'allouer ces 4 prochaines années 1,5 milliard pour un programme Ukraine qui inclut également le déminage humanitaire, mais qui inclut également la reconstruction et les projets de digitalisation, de décentralisation, etc. On essaye d'être là où l'Ukraine a besoin. On ne fait jamais rien sans que l'Ukraine nous dise « nous aimerions ça, ça et ça et ça ». Et sur la base de ça, on fait un programme qui est en préparation. On a déjà nommé le chef de ce programme, M. Gerber, vous êtes au courant. Et ce programme sera bientôt décidé par le Conseil fédéral. Et ceci vous donnera la big picture, la grande image de ce que la Suisse veut faire pendant ces 4 prochaines années, malgré les difficultés financières que les journalistes suisses connaissent, des discussions que chaque jour on fait en Suisse, malgré ces difficultés, on veut aller de cette manière. Certaines choses restent encore à être approuvées par le Parlement. Les discussions sont en cours. Je suis confiant que d'ici la fin de l'année, on aura des décisions favorables pour maintenir le soutien de l'Ukraine. Merci pour votre attention.
Merci, Monsieur le Conseiller fédéral.
Шановні колеги-журналісти, шановний пане міністре Ігнасіо Касіс, пане державний міністр закордонних справ Японії, для початку я хочу щиро подякувати Швейцарії за організацію конференції. Сьогодні тут присутні понад 200 учасників. Загалом це понад 60 країн світу та організацій, які беруть участь в цьому надзвичайно важливому заході. Це один із прикладів того, що увага до питань розмінування України, вона не слабне, і підтримка України залишається незмінною. Ми вдячні за участь в конференції також іншим країнам, які, як і Україна, відчули на собі проблему замінування територій. Камбоджа, Хорватія, інші. Співпраця між країнами, які вже мають досвід боротьби змінними забрудненнями є ключовою для обміну кращими практиками та успішними рішеннями. Завдяки допомозі нашим партнерам Україна зробила надзвичайний прогрес у розмінуванні. Рік тому разом з вами, з партнерами, ми зустрічалися в Загребі, в Хорватії. Тоді у нас було 18 операторів з протимінної діяльності, приблизно 3000 саперів і 32 машини для розмінування. На сьогодні сертифіковано 58 операторів. Кількість саперів зросла до понад 4000, а на полях працює 98 машин для розмінування, частина з яких є вже українського виробництва. Та головна наша інша цифра – це фактичний результат і вплив на життя людей, на життя мільйонів українців, процес розмінування, до якого долучилися наші партнери. Завдяки нашим спільним зусиллям ми повернули в використання 35 тисяч квадратних кілометрів землі. Це приблизно як територія Молдови. Це для того, щоб можна було зрозуміти масштаби нашої з вами спільної діяльності. Якщо ми говоримо суто про землі сільгосппризначення, агроземлі, то ми повернули в цьому році в експлуатацію 238 тисяч гектар землі. І підрахунки показують, що ми могли б зібрати з цих земель більше 1 мільйона 100 тисяч тонн пшениці. І я абсолютно погоджуюсь з міністром закордонних справ Швейцарії відносно того, що розмінування територій – це можливість для людей в першу чергу повернутися своїм містам, можливість повернутися людей в свої громади. Це можливість для аграріїв працювати на полях, збирати урожай і постачати його на світові ринки. Адже розмінування України – це не питання, яке обмежується географією нашої країни, це, звичайно, питання глобальної продовольчої безпеки. До повномасштабного вторгнення Україна годувала понад 400 мільйонів людей у світі щорічно. Саме тому гуманітарне розмінування і безпека наших полів – один із ключових елементів формули миру президента Зеленського. І наша мета – це повернення 80% потенційно замінованих земель впродовж 10 років до продуктивного використання. Навіть попри проблемну роботу, це досить величезний виклик, і на цьому шляху нам потрібна підтримка вас, наших партнерів. За цей рік ми спільно з вами розробили стратегію протимінної діяльності, головний документ в цій сфері. Ми запустили ринок з послуг з розмінування та провели понад 20 аукціонів в системі Прозора на закупівлю таких послуг. Цю систему міжнародна спільнота неодноразово називала однією з найбільш прозорих у світі, і ми просимо наших міжнародних партнерів підтримати нашу ініціативу з розбудови цього ринку. Це допоможе суттєво пришвидшити процес розмінування і поверне наших аграріїв на поля. Як і допоможе впровадження, звичайно, інноваційних технологій. Ми вже використовуємо дрони, ми використовуємо сенсорні технології, аналізуємо спутникові знімки, працюємо з штучним інтелектом для того, щоб пріоритизувати процес розмінування. Що більше, саме сьогодні на конференції ми оголошуємо про те, що спільно з урядом України, уряд Великобританії, Швейцарія та компанія Palantir проведе 3-місячний пілотний проект в Харківській області з аналітики пріоритетності розмінування. Ми також розуміємо, що процес розмінування буде потребувати пошуку інноваційного підходу до фінансування. І саме якраз над цим ми зараз працюємо, над моделями інноваційного фінансування, які дозволять забезпечити сталість процесу розмінування в нашій державі. І останнє, ми активно працюємо з партнерами над тим, аби вони підтримували виробництва українських машин, адже це також підтримка нашої економіки. Це дозволяє створити робочі місця, це дозволяє збільшити податкові надходження до бюджету і стимулювати залучення інвестицій. Ми вже маємо гарні приклади, коли структури ООН закуповують машини, зроблені в Україні. Ми вже маємо гарні приклади, коли хорватська компанія локалізувала виробництво своїх машин в Україні. Закінчуючи, я хочу питанням, яке я чую найчастіше від іноземних ЗМІ щодо розмінування. Чому ми маємо займатися процесом розмінування, коли війна в Україні досі триває? І територія, яка сьогодні очищена від мін, завтра може бути замінованою. Бо все, що ми робимо, це в першу чергу безпека людей. І нині в зоні ризику перебувають 6 мільйонів українців. Якщо ми не очищимо спільно з вами наші поля, міста і села від мін, то до 2030 року кількість нещасних випадків може зрости до 9 тисяч. І мільйон людей може опинитися перед ризиком голоду. Тому ми маємо діяти сьогодні. Тому ми маємо діяти разом, спільно, заради нашої безпеки завтра. І я дуже ще раз хочу подякувати організаторам цієї конференції. І сподіваюся, що для Японії це теж буде гарним прикладом. І в продовження цієї традиції обговорення конференції з дуже конкретними результатами, тому що у нас є з вами дуже спільна мета – очищити Україну від мін в найближчі роки. Дякую.
Now give the floor to Mr. Yoshifumi.
皆さんこんにちは。日本国外務大臣の柘植義文でございます。本日このような機会をいただき、会議のホストであるカシス外務大臣とスマレンコ第一副首相に心から感謝申し上げます。ウクライナ地震対策会議が昨年のクロアチアでの会合を引き継ぐ形で、今年もこのローザンヌで開催されたことを歓迎いたしております。私も全体会議等に出席し、地震対策支援に取り組む方々の話を伺い、日本といたしましてもさらに貢献したいという強い気持ちを強く持ちました。ロシアによる侵略の結果、ウクライナが戦火にさらされ、世界で最も地雷が埋没された国の一つになったことに深い悲しみを覚えます。ロシアによる侵略は力による一方的な現状変更でヨーロッパにとどまらずアジアを含む国際秩序の根幹を揺るがす暴挙であります。日本も今日のウクライナは明日の東アジアかもしれないという意識を持って力強くウクライナを支援してまいります。地雷の脅威にさらされるのはそこで生活を営む一般市民の方々でございます。日本は地雷により人々が傷つき、地域の復旧・復興が困難になる事実を深刻に受け止めております。私個人といたしましても、長年郵便局長やその全国組織の長として地域の方々を一番近くに寄り添って支える郵政事業に携わってまいりました。地域コミュニティを困難な状況に陥らせる事態に強い憤りを覚えます。日本は人間の安全保障の理念のもと、脆弱な人々も安心安全に暮らせる世界を実現すべく外交を積み重ね、地雷対策にも一貫して取り組んできました。本年7月には地雷対策支援に関する包括的パッケージ及び日カンボジア地震イニシアチブを発信いたしました。そこでは多様なパートナーと連携しながらリスク回避教育、啓発支援から地雷除去支援、そして地雷被害者支援までさまざまなニーズと段階に応じた包括的な支援を実施していくことをビジョンと掲げております。また日本は人道支援、開発協力及び平和の取り組みを相互に連携させて効果を最大化させる HDT ネクサスを推進しており、今回のウクライナでの地震除去やリスク回避教育を包含する日本のパッケージ及びイニシアチブはまさにこうしたアプローチに資するものでございます。このような考えのもと、日本はウクライナへの日本製の地雷探知機、除去機などの提供に加え、機器の使用訓練や住民の啓蒙活動の研修等を実施して いたしております。8月には JICA とカンボジア地震対策センターの協力のもと、ウクライナ非常事態庁の職員を日本とカンボジアに招き、日本製の高性能地雷除去機器の運用研修を行いました。そして日本はウクライナの地雷対策を世界的に進めるために、来年ウクライナ地震対策会議をホストすることといたしました。日本が培ってきた地雷対策の経験を世界に向けて発信するだけでなく、今回の会合の成果をスイスからしっかり受け継ぎ、会議をウクライナへの復旧復興に向けた最新の知見を共有する場とすべく、準備を進めてまいります。ありがとうございました。
Thank you, Mr. State Minister. Now both Mrs. Sviridenko and Mr. Kassis are ready to take questions. Please tell your name and the media you're working for before to ask the question. Mr. Siro.
Laurent Siro pour l'agence de presse suisse Keystone ATS. D'abord, monsieur le conseiller fédéral, la conférence d'aujourd'hui est organisée dans une séquence de plusieurs efforts politiques et diplomatiques. Et on sait que les consultations sont toujours en cours sur le suivi du Bürgerstock. Et hier, le président Zelensky a présenté son plan de la victoire. Il le défend aujourd'hui à Bruxelles sur un ton un peu plus dur que ce qui avait été le cas au Bürgerstock. Est-ce que vous considérez que c'est complémentaire aux efforts que la Suisse et l'Ukraine mènent dans le cadre du processus du Bürgerstock, ou est-ce que ce ton un peu plus dur va être un obstacle pour le suivi et notamment pour organiser un second sommet? And maybe for the first Deputy Prime Minister, since July, your government has said that it would like to organize that second summit in the Bürgerstock process in November. It seems that it's going to be more complicated than that. So is there any new target date for that second summit? Thank you.
En ce qui concerne la première question, oui, la conférence du Bürgerstock a ouvert toute une série de conférences sur les différents points du processus de paix du président Zelensky qui sont en train d'avoir lieu et vont se terminer avec la dernière de ces conférences qui est celle du Canada qui aura lieu la semaine prochaine ou dans 2 semaines, je ne me rappelle plus, 29 je crois. C'est juste, hein, 29. Donc avec ça, la série des conférences de ce qu'on avait appelé le processus de Copenhague se termine, dans lequel le premier sommet de paix a eu lieu. L'Ukraine a toujours voulu organiser que ce soit organisé un deuxième semaine de paix, et je crois qu'une fois terminé ce premier sommet, ce premier volet de Copenhague, quelque chose se termine, et à ce quelque chose, et c'est là la nouveauté, et c'était aussi l'échange avec le Premier ministre Shmyhal aujourd'hui, qui nous a expliqué ce plan présenté hier au Parlement ukrainien par le président Zelensky, dans les intentions de l'Ukraine. À ce volet s'ajoute ce nouveau plan. Donc ce que j'ai compris, que selon les volontés de l'Ukraine, c'est un plan complémentaire, mais on a ici la vice-premier ministre qui pourra éventuellement élaborer davantage là-dessus. Nous allons évidemment approfondir cette réflexion à Berne avec les départements concernés, également pour voir comment la Suisse peut aider à renforcer tout chemin qui nous amène à une paix juste et durable. C'est ce qu'on a toujours dit et ce que l'on continuera à dire.
Should I speak in English or Ukrainian? Do you have translation? Okay. Презентована президентом Зеленським вчора презентований план перемоги. Це план, який логічно продовжує формулу миру і є, скажімо, перехідним етапом до проведення другого саміту миру. Наразі, якщо ми говоримо про... Okay, so let me try to... Sorry. It started now? Oh, okay.
Moi,
So I can try to.
No, it's better to speak in because there are people maybe that who don't understand English.
So it's better to speak Ukrainian.
Yeah,
Okay. Yep. Do you have translation?
Well, I already had translation for you. I don't know.
Maybe just you.
No, translation from you.
Yeah, because I'm just looking at the eyes of the.
It's working.
Okay.
It's okay.
Окей. Що зараз відбувається в частині розвитку формули миру? Наразі проходять тематичні конференції по кожному пункту формули, і які закінчуються прийняттям комюніке. І вже основні положення цих прийнятих комюніке, власне, будуть основою для майбутнього мирного плану і проведення другого саміту. Але я тут погоджуюсь з моїм колегою. Вчора оголошений план перемоги є продовженням формули миру. І сьогоднішній захід теж є важливою частиною, пов'язаною з пунктом формули Food Security.
Thank you. Please.
Yulia Akimova, RBC Ukraine. I have a question for Cassis. I'm here. Thank you. Previously you said that Ukraine is not so far from Switzerland, and this is all true. So in your opinion, what the main goal this conference should achieve for Ukraine? What the main help? So what we could tell at home?
So I will stay by French. Hein? Donc là, le but, comme je vous l'ai dit, de cette deuxième conférence est double. D'un côté, nous avons un but de perfectionner le soutien politique et financier à ce qui se passe. Politique internationale et financier, surtout bilatéral, mais aussi avec des organisations internationales. Tout ce qu'on ne répète pas va se perdre, va s'oublier. Et donc il est important non seulement de le répéter, mais il est important aussi de l'élargir. Puisque voilà, nous avons des participants aujourd'hui qui n'étaient pas à Zagreb. Et donc c'est important qu'on élargisse ce processus. Et surtout, n'oubliez pas, le déminage humanitaire, c'est quelque chose qui va nous accompagner indépendamment du fait que la guerre se termine aujourd'hui ou demain ou après-demain. Ça va nous accompagner pour 50 ans, en tout cas. C'est un processus, on voit des pays qui sont encore en train de déminer les mines de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale. Donc on est dans une dimension temporelle de génération. Donc qu'est-ce qu'on amène à la paix? On rentre à la maison, on dit « Ok, on s'est compris », rien que ça c'est déjà tout dire hein, dans le monde actuel, on s'est compris sur les grands buts, sur les objectifs, sur les principes, on est d'accord de s'engager financièrement et dans une coopération, et ceci permet à l'Ukraine dans son plan stratégique d'avoir une guidance claire pour les gens dans le terrain. La Fondation suisse de déminage, après cette conférence, elle est plus sûre dans son travail. Elle sait mieux que le plan stratégique de l'Ukraine sera financé, pourra durer, et elle peut donc s'engager. En plus, et vous l'avez vu, les conférences internationales, c'est souvent des catalysateurs pour des décisions gouvernementales. Le Conseil fédéral vient d'allouer 30 millions de francs spécifiquement, et c'était évidemment aussi en vue de cette conférence, pour dire aux autres États, nous sommes là et nous allons de l'avant.
Merci, Monsieur le Conseil fédéral. Monsieur Raoult.
Raphael Rauch, Sonntagsblick. I have a question to Bundesrat Cassis. Switzerland is kind of flirting or observing the process of Brazil and China. Your Secretary Fasel has been to Brazil yesterday. Which update can you give us on that process? And Madam Vice Prime Minister, since you are also Minister of Economy, the Kiev School of Economics asks international companies to leave Russia. We have a lot of Swiss companies which are still in Russia. What is your call on that question?
En ce qui concerne le positionnement de la Suisse en matière de plan sino-brésilien, je vous répète ce que nous disons depuis la naissance de ce plan le mois de mai. Tout plan qui vise à la paix et qui peut contribuer de manière constructive, si basée sur la Charte des Nations Unies, est à saluer favorablement et à réfléchir s'il y a des complémentarités intéressantes. Avoir une porte ouverte vers deux pays comme la Chine et le Brésil est importante pour élargir l'alliance des gens qui veulent terminer cette guerre. Et le plan dont vous parlez en est maintenant à sa deuxième version, parce que la première version de mai a été amendée en fin septembre à septembre, et il y a eu la volonté de ces États d'y ajouter des référentiels à la charte de l'ONU. Il reste des contradictions, c'est vrai, mais je crois qu'il faut, si on le lit d'une manière politique, c'est l'ouverture d'une porte pour un dialogue. Et dans ce sens, on ne peut que saluer toute initiative qui veut ouvrir des portes. Je ne pense pas que le rapprochement est encore suffisamment avancé, mais je pense que c'est une porte ouverte qui est toujours meilleure qu'une porte fermée.
Щодо вашого запитання, я вважаю, що всі наші партнери, ми всі разом маємо працювати над тим, щоб унеможливити Росію продовжувати війну і вбивати українців. Це стосується і посилення санкційної політики, і інших джерел надходжень до їх бюджету. Тому ми будемо надалі просити наших партнерів відзеркалювати санкції, які стосуються російських компаній. Ми надалі будемо наполягати на тому, щоб компанії виходили з Росії і не створювали для їх бюджету додаткового ресурсу, щоб продовжувати боротьбу.
Une dernière question, madame.
Yes, good afternoon. Emma Farge from Reuters News Agency. A question for the first Deputy Prime Minister and for the State Minister of Japan after that. The first question is, what are you actually doing with all of the mines and unexploded ordnances in Ukraine? Are you destroying them or actually recycling them or reusing them in any way? And the more general question for both of you would be, are you concerned about donor fatigue on demining now that the war is in its third year? Are you seeing any signs of that, or is support still strong? Thank you very much.
All right, so we will close here the press conference. We have right now an interesting program. The three ministers. Sorry, I interrupt you?
No. There was a question and...
Oh, I'm sorry. Because
the answer is very quickly. So we're destroying them. So destroying them, not recycling, destroying. Yes.
I'm sorry. So we close here the press conference. We do have a quick program for the three ministers. They're going to visit the landmines that we built in the floor, and eventually they will have time for bilateral interviews. Thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry.
No.